Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you guys are staying safe and staying indoors with all the shelter in place that's going on right now. We've been missing you at the youth group, but the way things are, we can't be meeting physically. But that's the reason for this video. So I'm hoping this finds you guys really well, and we're looking forward basically to being able to communicate with you guys a little bit through some short video series. And I've put together a little series that I think is great for this time when we're all doing our shelter in place and trying to stay safe with the coronavirus concerns. So the little series of videos that we're going to be looking at, and I hope you guys will be able to check out as we're releasing them, I've called Days in the Wilderness. So it's basically taking stories from the Bible of people, God's people, and people who were followers of God who found themselves in situations of kind of isolation, situations that were sort of taken apart from society or kind of on their own for a little bit of time, and really just trying to see what we can learn from those stories as we move forward and with whatever is to come, which we are uncertain about. So the first story that I've selected for you guys, it comes from the book of Genesis, and that is the story of Noah. And you find that in Genesis 6, so that's not too far down the line after creation. And some basic background for the story is that human beings have kind of screwed things up, and it's not too much to believe that. That kind of happens all the time. We're good at that in our own ways, but yet there's always hope, and there's always redemption, and there's always salvation that can come out of bad circumstances. So human beings have screwed things up, and there's this kind of judgment scenario that comes up, and the judgment comes in the form of a flood. And God selects one of the very few people left who are actually righteous and who actually want to serve Him rather than serve themselves, and his name is Noah. And so God selects Noah and his family to basically have this divine kind of mission. And it takes a really interesting form. So God is going to judge the world through a flood, and that flood's going to wash away, kind of literally and figuratively, all the evil that's been going on. And you can kind of see in Genesis 6 is where the story picks up. If you guys want to take a look at it in your Bibles, basically it's just several chapters in Genesis 6, 7, and 8. And you can kind of see how it's a reset button from Genesis 1, the actual creation. Because in the creation, it says that the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the waters of the deep. It's this kind of poetic language, and separated the waters. And it says that the waters above God called sky, and the waters below God called the seas and the oceans. And what you see in the flood account is that the floodgates of heaven are opened, and then waters actually come up from under the ground as well to flood. So you see these waters kind of collapsing back in on each other, and that is basically kind of returning to that chaotic state where everything's all mixed together and not separated and ordered like God put it. So it's a really cool narrative, and it involves God's miracles, and it also involves, again, Noah and his family, and they're called. And there's a few little passages that I want to read to you guys, and I encourage you to read the whole thing. You guys have no excuse, because I know you're indoors all the time and you're not going to school and you're not going to work. So hopefully you guys can take a few minutes to read through this story and get a better idea as I'm just taking a few verses at a time. So chapter 6, starting in verse 19, God is basically giving Noah these commands to build this ark, this massive boat that's going to be able to survive this flood. And of course everyone thinks he's crazy at the time, but God gives him these specific commands. And God says something like this: "And of every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the birds according to their kinds, and of the animals according to their kinds, of every creeping thing on the ground according to its kind. 2 of every sort shall come into you to keep them alive. Also take with you every sort of food that is eaten, and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them." Noah did all this. He did all that God commanded him. So that's the final part of that passage. Noah did all this. He did all that God commanded him. So kind of a funny thing here is that basically one way to put it is, like in modern language, is that Noah's kind of like a divinely ordained prepper. So he's someone who is preparing for the worst case scenario. He's not just squandering everything he has. He's not just, as soon as he gets his paycheck or his allowance or whatever it is, spending all his money and just thinking about today. He's thinking, well, not just about tomorrow, but quite a ways down the line. And with God's help, he's preparing for this circumstance. And I basically want to begin by encouraging you guys to kind of see yourselves in this situation as kind of like Noah of sorts. Like, not all of us saw this thing coming with the COVID-19 virus, but now that we know it's here, there's a lot of cool things that we can do to prepare. Even though we've already done the shelter in place, there's a lot of things that we can do that are still going to take us into a better place to be physically prepared, to be mentally, emotionally, and spiritually prepared too. So I really encourage you guys just to get into that mindset, but just to give you guys 3 things to kind of jumpstart that process that I would really encourage. We're going to try and post links on our Facebook page and Instagram that'll give links to articles that'll kind of help out with this. But number 1 is plant a garden. This can be a really good time to get into better touch with nature and with creation around us. And so many of us who have maybe never grown anything in our lives, we just kind of take food for granted, and we can go out and buy it and this and that. But in this time, especially when going out is a little bit less common, then it can just be so great to have a hand in making your own food. And you appreciate the meals you have so much more. And if you guys aren't in the country, don't have a lot of land, then don't worry, and don't think that this doesn't apply to you, because there are also some great articles out there about how you guys can take even like a 5-gallon pot or things like that and just have a variety of plants in there, whether it's some tomatoes, a little bit of lettuce, some peppers, things like that. You can actually fit quite a bit in just a few of those pots. So that can be a really productive thing to do. And it can be something that you kind of take control of your situation, and you can be resourceful, and you can be a provider and a supporter of yourself. And heck, you can even share some of your food with your family and friends too. So that's one thing. And another thing is, if you guys have ever had the urge to kind of find a skill or find a hobby or find a craft, I think this can be a great time. If you guys like to be artistic and maybe create stuff by painting or by putting things together or building figurines or whatever it is, writing stories, it can be any number of things. Learning how to dance, learning how to do any number of things like that. Could be figuring out how to do Photoshop or video editing on a computer too. All those things are so good, because those are talents that God and potential that God has given you. And so often we're just so busy that we don't have time to take advantage of these things and kind of add to our list of skills in life. And this can be a great time for that too. And the third thing I would say, and this kind of maybe is similar to the second one too, is you could learn a language. Like especially if we have to be sheltering in place, not just maybe for a few weeks, but maybe even for a few more months, depending on how this all goes and pans out. That's a great time through apps like with Duolingo is a great example, is take that time to really dive into that and make it a daily kind of thing. And maybe by the end of this, you guys could come out knowing Spanish or German or French or Russian, or take your pick of whatever language you like. And wouldn't that be just such a great skill to move forward with? You could impress your friends, but you could also be a great talent as you move forward in life. So those are just 3 things to kind of take advantage of the situation and prepare. Now, as we kind of move forward in the narrative, because I want to keep these videos, I was hoping to keep it under 10 minutes, but this is my first one, and we'll aim for about 15 on this one. So you see in chapter 7, now we're at chapter 7, verse 13. And so basically, they're getting ready to jump into the ark right now. It says, on the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, entered into the ark. And every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, and every creeping thing according to its kind, and every bird, and every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, two and two of all flesh, in which there was breath of life. So basically, a lot of ways of saying everything that was alive, that was around, they took it into the ark. And the last part of this passage, though, is what is really cool, I think. It says, they all went in as God commanded them, and the Lord shut him in. So that last line I really, really like, and I think that just is really, really cool. The Lord shut Noah in. So, we might think that this situation kind of came on us by surprise, but it certainly didn't come on God by surprise. And the fact that we're having to shelter in place, I think a healthy way to look at that is not necessarily like this is something that nature or society just kind of threw at us because it was a necessity, we had to do it, and it's just sort of imposed on us by that. I think this is maybe another way of looking at it is that God's giving us here an opportunity. So maybe God actually has a hand in this. I really think he does. That God, in a sense, just like he shut in Noah in the ark, God closed those doors, he also is shutting us in. And he's doing that for a reason. He's doing that for a reason to grow us. So again, our lives can get hectic. Every day we're always distracted and we're filled with concerns about friends and social life and school and this and that. Maybe this is a way for God to say, hey, I'm going to quiet all that down for a while. I'm going to take that and turn the volume all the way down to almost zero so that maybe you can hear my voice a little bit better. Maybe you can hear what it is I want for your life a little bit more closely. Now, to move on in the story so we can see how it resolves for Noah, most of us who've heard this story know of the 40 days and the 40 nights. So, of course, it says it rained severely and intensely for 40 days and 40 nights when Noah and his family were in the ark. But I remember when I was growing up and I heard that story, I kind of just stopped there. I thought, okay, no, 40 days, 40. So Noah was, in the ark for a little bit more than a month, and then it was up. Not quite what the story says. So here is what we read in chapter 7, going into chapter 8 actually. And the waters prevailed on the earth for 150 days. So that's like 6 months. So even though the rain was this massive storm was there for 40 days, 150 days the waters were prevailing. The waters were like rising and still up there at the top. But then it goes on and says, and at the end of 150 days, the waters had abated. They calmed down. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, so over half a year, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. So this on top of a mountain called Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. And it keeps going on and on and on and on. And eventually, it basically says that Noah and his family were actually in the ark not just a little over a month, like we might think at first. They were actually in there before they came out. The mountains or the waters slowly came down for over a year. They were in there for over a year. So, imagine those first 40 days and 40 nights were probably the really intense times, and everyone's just worried if the boat's going to hold together and going to fall apart, and everyone's stressed. But after that time, they had to wait for almost a year after that. So imagine what they had to do. They had chores. They had to take care of the animals. Any of you guys that have been raised on a farm or raised with animals know that can be not always the most fun experience. You have to feed the animals. You also have to take care of what comes out the other end. And they were on a boat, so they had to take care of that, and they had to take care of each other and make food for each other. And sometimes I like to think, and this is fun because the Bible doesn't tell us, is what else did they do when they were in there? Or maybe they had a little bit of free time. What kind of games did they play? They obviously didn't have social media or cell phones or video games, but maybe they had something like a board game or something like a card game that they brought. We never know. But I think besides having fun when they could and doing their chores, I really believe, and I know in my heart that they took that time that they had in there, over a year, to pray to God and to get closer to God. Because, if they didn't, then their whole experience would have just kind of been meaningless. They would have just been trying to survive. But God called them in there to do more than just survive. He wanted them to thrive. He wanted them to flourish and grow. And it's only by keeping close to God in prayer, drawing close to Him in their hearts, that they were able to do that. And so I just want that to be, as we kind of get to a close here, our mindset as we move forward together with this. Because we are together, even though we're not physically meeting together, guys. We are. I pray for all of you guys every single day, and I'm hoping that you stay encouraged and stay productive. And we're in this for the long haul. Noah had to be in it for the long haul. He could have said, "Oh, I hope it only lasts 2 months, and then I'm just going to kind of give up." He had to be in it for as long as it took, and God probably didn't tell him when it was going to end. He didn't tell him it's going to be 11 or 12, 13 months or anything. He just had to be patient and trust. And we have to do that as well. We have to be in this for the long haul. If the quarantine, self-quarantine, and the shelter in place goes on for longer than we expected, then let's stick with it. And let's stick with God, and let's stick with each other. The last little thing I'll read is basically a little kind of God gets inspired by seeing Noah's faith. And after Noah and his family get out of the ark, God says something like a promise to Noah. And it kind of takes the form of like a little poem. It says, "The Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man." And then he says, "While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall never cease." So that's kind of God's way of saying he was touched by what Noah did. He was touched by Noah's faith and his courage and his persistence. And God says, for as long as the earth remains, there's always going to be this cycle. And so, the nighttime isn't going to last forever. The daylight is going to come. The storm isn't going to last forever. The sunshine will be there afterwards. And same with this. Same with the coronavirus. This is not going to last forever. There's something on the other side of it. But we can't wait till then to start growing. We've got to be growing right now. And God's teaching us something in this moment. So I went a little bit long this time. I kind of had to introduce this little series that we're doing, and I'll try and keep the videos to 10 minutes or less in the future. But thank you guys for bearing with me. I know it's been a couple of weeks, and we really do miss you guys. And we are praying for you guys. I hope you guys are staying safe and staying encouraged and with your families, and really use this time to build each other up. Be like Noah. Trust God. Listen to his voice. Be productive, prepare, take advantage of that, plant a garden if you want, and listen to God and be in it for the long haul, because we're given one day at a time, the Bible says, and that's how we should live our lives. So we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but we know that we have today, we have this moment, and God is with us in that always. So I love you guys. Look forward as we're going to post more videos onto Facebook. We're also going to be more active on our Instagram page. So I encourage you guys to check us out there. And hope you're all doing well. Looking forward to talking with you again. And I'll be praying for you guys in the meantime. We love you.